Daniel sat alone at a coffee shop on a Friday night, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel lonely. He felt free. His phone buzzed with another group invite, another party, another loud room full of people. But Daniel just smiled, turned his phone face down, and took a slow sip of his coffee. Something was shifting inside him. He didn't know it yet, but he was about to discover 5 rare traits that quiet people like him share. Traits most folks never even notice. And by the end of his journey, Daniel would understand why some of the strongest, sharpest, most creative people in the world actually prefer being alone. So stick around, because what Daniel learns might change the way you see yourself too. It started on a Tuesday. Daniel was sitting in a crowded break room at work, surrounded by co-workers laughing about a show he'd never watched. He smiled and nodded, but inside, he felt like a ghost. Later that night, he sat on his balcony with a notebook. No music, no phone, just him and the quiet. And for the first time in a long time, he asked himself a simple question. What do I actually want? The answer surprised him. He didn't want more friends. He didn't want louder weekends. He wanted peace. He wanted to know himself. So he started small. Every morning, he took a walk. No headphones, no distractions, just his thoughts. And here's where it gets interesting. The more time Daniel spent alone, the more clearly he could see himself, his real likes, his real goals, his real feelings. He noticed something strange. When he was around people all the time, he mostly copied them, their opinions, their moods, even their dreams. But alone, his own voice finally came through. That was trait number 1, deep self-awareness. People who prefer being alone aren't hiding, they're listening to themselves. Daniel felt proud of this little breakthrough, but it didn't last long, because the next challenge was already waiting. A few weeks later, Daniel's younger sister called him crying. She'd had a rough breakup. She didn't want advice, she just wanted someone to listen. And something weird happened. Daniel, the quiet one, the one who always stayed in the background, knew exactly what to say, or rather, what not to say. He didn't try to fix her. He didn't jump in with stories about himself. He just listened, really listened. He caught the little shakes in her voice, the long pauses, the words she didn't say. When they hung up, his sister whispered, "Thank you. You always get it." Daniel sat there, stunned. He'd always thought he was bad with people, but the truth was the opposite. All those hours alone had turned him into a careful listener, a quiet watcher, someone who could feel what others were feeling, even when they didn't say a word. That was trait number 2, high emotional intelligence. When you spend time alone, you learn how emotions work from the inside out. And once you understand your own heart, you can understand other people's hearts too. Daniel started to wonder what else solitude was quietly building in him. He didn't have to wait long to find out. It happened on a rainy Sunday afternoon. Daniel was bored. No plans, no texts, just him and a blank sketchbook he'd bought years ago and never used. So he picked up a pencil and he started to draw. He wasn't good. The lines were shaky, the shapes were weird. But something lit up inside him, a little spark he hadn't felt since he was a kid. One sketch turned into 10. 10 turned into a full notebook. Soon, he was writing short stories too. Then, little songs on an old guitar. Ideas poured out of him like water from a broken faucet. His co-worker Ben saw one of his drawings on his desk and asked, "Where do you get all these ideas?" Daniel shrugged. "I don't know. They just show up when it's quiet." But here's the thing. That wasn't luck. That was trait number 3, creativity, original thinking. See, when you're always around other people, your brain is busy reacting, busy fitting in, busy keeping up. But when you're alone, your mind finally gets room to wander. And that's where real ideas are born. Daniel started to see the world differently. He noticed colors he'd never noticed before. He heard songs in everyday sounds. He was becoming, in his own small way, an artist. But then came his biggest test. Daniel's boss called him into the office one Monday morning. The company was starting a huge new project. A tough one that needed months of deep, focused work. "I'm giving it to you," his boss said, "because you're the only one around here who can actually sit still and think." Daniel laughed nervously. But his boss wasn't joking. For the next 3 months, Daniel worked harder than he ever had. Long, quiet hours. No group chats, no loud meetings. Just him and the problem. And something amazing happened. He didn't get bored. He didn't get restless. He actually enjoyed it. While others needed noise and company to stay sharp, Daniel could drop into what people call deep focus for hours at a time. When the project wrapped, his boss stared at the results and shook his head. "How did you do this alone?" Daniel smiled. "I think alone is how I do my best work." That was trait number 4. Strong focus. Mental discipline. People who like being alone have trained their minds to stay on task, without needing claps or cheers to keep going. Daniel felt unstoppable. But one question still haunted him. If he loved being alone so much, did that mean he'd always be lonely? The answer came on a warm summer evening. Daniel was at a small backyard dinner, just 4 people, a close friend, a cousin, his sister, and a new friend named Maya. There was no loud music, no big crowd, just good food and real talk. They laughed about small things. They shared real worries. They sat in comfortable silence between stories. When Daniel went home that night, he realized something huge. He wasn't lonely. He never had been. He just didn't want fake friendships anymore. He didn't need 50 shallow connections. He needed a few deep ones. People he could truly be himself with. People who didn't drain him. People who felt like home. That was trait number 5. Authentic relationships. Quality over quantity. People who prefer being alone aren't antisocial. They just refuse to waste their time on relationships that don't feel real. And that was the last piece of the puzzle. Daniel sat on his balcony one last time, the same place where his journey began, the same notebook in his lap. But this time, he wasn't asking questions. He was writing answers. Deep self-awareness, emotional intelligence, creativity, focus, real relationships. 5 rare traits, and every single one had grown from the same quiet soil. Solitude. Daniel finally understood. Being alone wasn't a problem he needed to fix. It was a gift, a superpower that most people were too afraid to pick up. He closed the notebook, leaned back, and looked up at the sky. The stars were out. The city was quiet. And for the first time in his whole life, Daniel smiled and thought to himself, "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Then, the porch light clicked off.